My name is Alexandra, and at 33, I never expected to be sitting in my parents' living room feeling like I was at a business negotiation rather than a family gathering. As a financial advisor, I thought I understood everything about money and relationships until my grandmother passed away last month, leaving me an inheritance that suddenly made everyone act strange. When I got that text from my dad requesting a formal family meeting, my stomach dropped. Walking into their house that evening, the tension was thick enough to cut with a knife. Then my parents casually dropped a bomb about my inheritance money. Before I continue, let me know where you're watching from in the comments. Hit that subscribe button, because this is going to be a wild ride about family, money, and the lengths I went to protect what was rightfully mine. My grandmother, Martha, wasn't just family. She was my mentor, my confidant, the person who shaped me into who I am today. Our Sunday brunches were sacred. While other kids my age watched cartoons, I sat across from Grandma at her favorite diner listening to stories about growing up during tougher times and the financial wisdom she gained along the way. She would slice her pancakes into 4 pieces. This one is for living, this one for saving, this one for giving, and this tiny piece, this is for enjoying today. That's how you build wealth, Alexandra. Not by having everything now, but by planning for tomorrow. Those lessons stuck with me. By 12, I had my own budgeting system. At 16, I opened my first investment account using babysitting money, and Martha reviewed my statements with pride, never telling me what to do, but asking questions that made me think. My brother Andrew, 3 years younger, had a very different relationship with money. While I saved, he spent. While I planned, he lived in the moment. Our parents fed this pattern. When Andrew blew his allowance on candy, they slipped him extra. When he forgot to save for a school trip, they covered it. When I was 17, I'd been saving for 6 months to buy a laptop for college. The day I planned to buy it, Andrew crashed his bike into Mrs. Peterson's garden gnomes. Instead of making him pay for the damage, my parents took the money from my laptop fund, promising to pay me back. They never did. I worked an extra month at the library to make up the difference. This dynamic never stopped. I worked my way through college on a partial scholarship. Andrew went to an expensive private university, failed most classes, and our parents bailed him out every semester. I built my career step by step. Andrew bounced between jobs, always blaming toxic workplaces. Through all of this, Grandma Martha was my sanctuary. She saw through the family patterns and told me, family is important, Alexandra, but not at the expense of your own well-being. When she was diagnosed with stage 4 cancer last year, I was devastated. I spent her last weeks by her side. Andrew visited twice, both times to ask her for money for his latest food truck idea. When she passed, I grieved deeply. Sometimes I'd see her favorite oatmeal at the grocery store and break down right there in the aisle. Martha had mentioned leaving me something in her will, but we never talked numbers. Money was never the point of our relationship. I was already financially stable with a condo, a good career, and a retirement account. Not rich, but proud of where I was. Then came my father's text 3 weeks after the funeral. We need to have a family meeting this Friday. Important financial matters to discuss. Our family didn't do meetings. We did chaotic holiday dinners, not formal agendas. I knew in my gut this was about the inheritance. Driving to my parents' house, I noticed Andrew's brand new silver sports car parked outside. For someone always in financial trouble, he sure had nice things. Inside, Mom greeted me with an overly bright smile. The house smelled like her famous lasagna dish she only made when she wanted something. Dad shook my hand instead of hugging me. Andrew barely looked up from his phone, flashing a $5,000 watch on his wrist. I spotted a stack of papers on the dining table. The words last will and testament peeked out before Mom quickly covered them. When I casually asked about it, she laughed too quickly and said, "Oh, nothing important right now." We sat down in the living room, everyone acting like extras in a badly rehearsed play. After some awkward small talk, Dad finally spoke. "Alexandra, family is the most important thing in the world to us. We believe in supporting each other, through thick and thin." Mom jumped in, tears already glistening. "Your brother's been going through such a tough time. The economy is hard on young entrepreneurs." Andrew sighed dramatically. "I made some investments that didn't pan out. I've got creditors breathing down my neck. Nothing I can't handle eventually, but it's intense." Then Dad dropped, "We've been discussing the inheritance Grandma Martha left you. Given Andrew's situation and the fact that you're doing so well, we think the most sensible thing is to use your inheritance to clear his debts." They weren't asking. They had decided. Mom added softly, "You don't really need this money the way Andrew does. You've always been so responsible, sweetheart." I kept my face neutral. Years in finance had taught me to stay composed. "How much are we talking about?" I asked. "About $250,000, Dad said. I nearly choked. That was more than I expected, and likely most, if not all, of what Grandma left me. Mom continued. "We already spoke to Martha's lawyer. He said it should be simple to redirect the funds since you're family." The fact they'd gone behind my back to call her lawyer first was a punch to the gut. But I let them talk, gathering information. "Can you give me a breakdown of these debts?" I asked Andrew. He shifted uncomfortably. "Just business loans and some credit card stuff." Dad quickly interrupted. Andrew's last restaurant venture had some unexpected challenges. The location wasn't ideal. "That's strange," I said casually. "Cousin Sam told me it was doing well before it closed. I actually considered investing." Mom and Dad exchanged nervous glances. Andrew stared at his water glass. "Well, there were complications," Mom mumbled. "What kind of complications require $250,000? I pressed. Andrew snapped. "Why does it matter? The business failed. You're sitting on money you didn't even earn. The least you could do is help your family." The mask slipped. The entitlement was out in the open. Dad tried to smooth things over. "What your brother means is that this is an opportunity to help someone you love. That's what family does." I nodded slowly, my voice calm. "Can I see a detailed list of these debts? If I'm going to consider this." "Well, they're spread across different accounts," Andrew mumbled. I leaned in, my financial advisor instincts kicking hard. "Are we talking business loans, personal loans, credit cards?" "What exactly?" Mom jumped in quickly, voice soothing but evasive. "The details aren't really important, sweetie. What matters is helping your brother get back on his feet." I smiled thinly. Grandma Martha always said something about money troubles. The devil is in the details, and you can't fix what you can't face. The mention of my grandmother made Mom flinch. Guilt. Noted. "It's not all strictly business debt," Andrew admitted finally, a flicker of defiance in his voice. "I needed a place to live, so some of it's the down payment on my condo and a car for client meetings. The rest is, living expenses while I built the business. Living expenses that somehow included a luxury condo, a sports car, and a $5,000 watch. This wasn't a failed venture, it was lifestyle funding." "Excuse me for a moment," I said calmly, rising from my seat. "I need to use the restroom." As I walked away, I heard Mom whisper frantically, "Do you think she's going to agree?" Inside the bathroom, I locked the door, splashed cold water on my face, and stared at a reflection that looked calm, but felt anything but. My parents didn't see my financial responsibility as something to admire. They saw it as an opportunity to exploit. As I steadied myself with deep breaths, I noticed new extravagances around the house: a marble countertop, designer hand towels, expensive soap, and a crystal dispenser. Where was all this money coming from if they were so worried about Andrew's debts? I decided to take a calculated risk. Instead of heading back, I slipped quietly to Dad's home office. The door was ajar. Voices from the living room murmured faintly. On the desk sat a folder labeled Andrew's Finances in my father's precise handwriting. Heart-pounding, I flipped it open. The truth spilled out in neat rows of numbers, more than $100,000 in previous bailouts over the last 5 years, none repaid. Screenshots of Andrew's social media lavish trips to Bali and Switzerland, taken exactly when he claimed to be working tirelessly. And most damning of all, a printed email from Sarah, Andrew's ex-girlfriend, warning 6 months ago that he had a gambling problem and dangerous debts. My parents had ignored her entirely. I quickly snapped photos of everything on my phone, then heard footsteps. Sliding the folder back, I turned to the bookshelf, feigning interest in family photos just as Mom appeared in the doorway. "Alexandra, what are you doing in here?" Suspicion laced her voice. I smiled lightly. "Just looking at old pictures. I miss Grandma Martha so much." Her expression softened exactly as I'd expected, and she ushered me back to the living room without further questioning. "On the way," I whispered. "Mom, can I call my friend Jessica really quickly?" "I promised to confirm brunch tomorrow." Eager to get me back on track, she nodded. "Make it quick. Your father wants to finalize this tonight." In my old bedroom, now a guest room, I called Jessica, my one true confidant. She answered immediately. "Lex? Aren't you at your parents'?" Keeping my voice low, I explained everything. Jessica's outrage came fast. "Are you kidding me? They're trying to steal your inheritance for your deadbeat brother? After all you've told me about how they spoil him?" "I know," I whispered. "And now I have proof. He's gambling, he's lying, and they're enabling it. But Jess, there's something they don't know. Something Grandma and I arranged before she died." Jessica gasped when I explained. "Lex, that's brilliant. Your grandmother was brilliant." For the first time all evening, I smiled. "I have to go. I'll update you tomorrow." Composed once more, I returned to the living room wearing a carefully uncertain expression. "I think I understand the situation better now," I said gently. Andrew leaned forward eagerly. "It's been really stressful, sis. I can hardly sleep." "Sure," I thought. "The $5,000 watch probably helps you keep track of all those restless nights." But I stayed silent. "I just have a few more questions," I said smoothly. "When did these gambling debts start?" The room froze. Mom's face went pale. Dad stiffened. "What gambling debts?" Dad asked sharply. "We never said anything about gambling." I tilted my head, feigning innocence. "Oh, I just assumed. $250,000 is a lot for simple business expenses. Are we talking cryptocurrency? Sports betting?" Andrew's eyes betrayed him with a piezzi flash of panic. Mom jumped in, voice hard. "The nature of the debts isn't important, Alexandra. What's important is that your brother needs help, and you're in a position to provide it." I nodded slowly. "You're right. Family should help each other. That's why I helped Andrew with his resume last year, and why I offered to review his business plan for free." Dad pounced on the opening. "Exactly. And this is just another way you can help." I let the silence stretch before asking the question I'd been holding back. Why didn't Grandma Martha leave anything to Andrew? Surely, if she knew he was in trouble, she'd have wanted to help him too. The silence was deafening. Finally, Dad muttered, "Your grandmother had old-fashioned ideas about money. She didn't understand how hard it is for entrepreneurs today." Anger flared at their casual dismissal of the sharpest financial mind I'd ever known. I kept my face neutral. "So what exactly are you asking me to do? Sign something?" Transfer the inheritance once it comes through? Mom brightened immediately. The lawyer said you just need to sign a few documents redirecting the funds. We'll handle the paperwork. And if I do this? I asked carefully. Will Andrew get counseling? Start paying you back? I don't need counseling, Andrew snapped. I just need a fresh start. Dad shot him a warning glance. What your brother means is that with this clean slate, he'll be more responsible going forward. The lie hung in the air. I knew, and I suspected they knew I knew, that nothing would change. I just need some time to think, I said finally. It's a big decision. The relief on their faces was almost insulting. Palpable. They thought they had me on the hook. If only they knew what was coming. 6 months before that tense family meeting, I sat beside my grandmother's hospital bed, holding her frail hand as she dozed. The doctors had given her 3 months at best, though she stubbornly stretched it into nearly 5. Martha had always defied expectations. When her eyes fluttered open, that familiar sharpness was still there despite the pain and medication. Alexandra, she whispered, I need to speak with you alone. I glanced around the empty room. Confused. We are alone, Grandma. Good, she smiled weakly. Call Franklin Patterson for me. He's my attorney. His number's in my phone. The gravity in her tone made me obey without question. I found the contact, dialed, and put the call on speaker. Martha, a man's warm, professional voice greeted her. How are you feeling today? Like I'm dying, Franklin, she replied with her usual bluntness. But while I'm still clear-headed, I need to change some arrangements. I have Alexandra here, the granddaughter I told you about. That surprised me. I'd never met Mr. Patterson, nor had I known Grandma spoke of me to him. Hello, Alexandra, he said. Kindly. Your grandmother thinks the world of you. I'm sorry we're meeting like this. After brief pleasantries, Grandma got straight to business. Franklin, I want to change how Alexandra receives her inheritance. I don't trust my son and his wife to respect my wishes. The directness stunned me. Grandma, Dad would never, she cut me off with a gentle squeeze of my hand. Listen to me. I love my son, but I know him. He's always enabled your brother. That's partly my fault. What matters now is protecting what I've worked for, Mr. Patterson spoke up. Martha, are you thinking about the trust option we discussed? Yes. I want everything moved into an irrevocable trust with Alexandra as the sole beneficiary. Can we do it quickly? We can, he assured her. I'll draft the paperwork and bring it by tomorrow. What about your existing will? I asked. Let it stand, she said calmly. Let them think that's still the plan. I finally found my voice. Grandma, I don't understand what's going on. She looked at me with a mix of love and sadness. Your parents have been asking me for money for Andrew's debts for years. I always refused because I knew it wouldn't help him. But when I told them about my diagnosis, the first thing your father asked was how my estate would be divided. I made the mistake of saying most of it would go to you. I saw the look they exchanged. I knew they'd try to take it from you. I sat there stunned, but Mr. Patterson interrupted gently. Alexandra, I've been Martha's attorney for 30 years. I've seen this before, especially with families who have someone like your brother. Your grandmother is being wise, not paranoid. In the following weeks, as her health declined, I worked closely with Mr. Patterson to create the trust. We transferred every major asset, property, investments, cash, into an irrevocable trust with strict terms. At first, the secrecy felt unbearable. These were my parents after all. But each time I visited Grandma, she shared another story. About my father prying into her finances or Andrew's latest emergency. Those conversations erased any doubt. The trust included 3 key protections. 1. It was established during her lifetime, meaning assets would bypass probate entirely. 2. It specified how funds could be used for my education, housing, and eventually for my own children's education. 3. It barred any loans or gifts to my parents or brother, locked behind explicit legal language that could not be challenged. Grandma was determined to make sure her life's work remained intact and in safe hands. Patterson's approval as co-trustee had been the sticking point when we first set up the trust. I'd argued against such strict provisions. What if Andrew really does need help someday? I asked, shouldn't I be able to decide that for myself? My grandmother met my eyes with that sharp, unyielding gaze I knew so well. Alexandra, you've always had a tender heart, and that's beautiful. But I know my son and grandson. They will play on that tenderness until they've drained you dry. If Andrew truly changes and truly needs help, you can petition Franklin. Together, you'll make a wise decision. This is protection, not punishment. Mr. Patterson nodded in agreement. In my experience, if your brother genuinely reforms, having to go through a formal process to receive help will actually benefit him. It reinforces accountability. The day we finalized the trust, my grandmother seemed to come alive again. It's done, she said with a deep sigh of relief. Now I can spend what time I have left without worrying about what comes after. The trust was kept completely confidential. As far as my parents knew, my grandmother's original will, which left most of her estate to me, with only modest bequests to them and Andrew, was still in effect. The only people aware of the new arrangement were myself, Mr. Patterson, and the associate who helped draft the documents. When my grandmother passed 2 months later, I was heartbroken, but grateful we'd had time to say goodbye properly. At her funeral, I noticed my father in deep conversation with a man I later learned was Mr. Walters, the probate attorney handling the will. They thought they were being discreet, but their frequent glances in my direction told me everything. In the weeks that followed, I played ignorant. When my father casually mentioned there'd be paperwork for me to sign regarding Grandma's estate, I simply nodded. When Andrew, after years of barely speaking to me, suddenly began calling regularly, I pretended not to notice his sudden interest in my life. Meanwhile, Mr. Patterson kept me updated. Your father has contacted me 3 times, he said during one call. He keeps pressing about the timeline for distributing assets, especially liquid ones. And the trust? I asked, heart pounding. Absolutely ironclad, Patterson assured me. Unless you choose to tell them, they have no way of accessing those assets. The will they believe is controlling the estate is little more than an empty shell. All major holdings were transferred before your grandmother's death. We're letting probate proceed only for the small residual assets, just enough to keep up appearances. The arrangement wasn't just about protecting money. It was about honoring my grandmother's values. She hadn't worked her entire life, saving diligently, investing wisely, to see her legacy squandered on Andrew's gambling debts and impulsive luxuries. Keeping the secret from my family was the hardest part. Despite everything, I loved them. More than once, I thought about coming clean, but then I'd hear her voice again, "They'll drain you dry." So I kept up pretense, waiting to see just how far they'd go. When my father's text finally arrived, requesting a family meeting, I knew the reckoning was near. I'd spent 6 months preparing for this moment, but that didn't make it any easier. The realization that my parents viewed me not as a daughter, but as a solution to Andrew's problems, cut deeper than I expected. That night, sitting alone in my childhood bedroom, I felt the weight of what was coming. Speaking with Jessica, I felt an unexpected calm settle over me. My grandmother had seen this storm coming, and she'd given me the tools to stand my ground. Now it was time to use them. I walked back into the living room with new resolve, finding my family exactly as I'd left them. Dad wearing his business face, Mom fidgeting with nervous energy, and Andrew trying and failing to mask his anticipation. Clearly, they'd spent my absence strategizing. I think I understand the situation better now, I said evenly as I sat down. Relief washed over their faces. Mom reached out and squeezed my hand. I knew you'd come around, sweetheart. Family has to stick together. I nodded slowly. Family is important. Grandma Martha taught me that. At her name, I caught a flicker of discomfort cross Dad's face, though he quickly recovered. Your grandmother would want what's best for all of us, he said confidently. I decided to play along. So, what's the next step? I assume. You have paperwork ready? Dad brightened. Yes. Mr. Walters prepared some forms. Once you sign, the estate will clear probate, and the funds can go straight toward Andrew's obligations. The casual way he spoke about diverting my inheritance stunned me, but I kept my composure. And how soon will this happen? Within weeks, Dad replied smoothly. Andrew, unable to contain himself, blurted out, This is such a relief. Sis, I already put a deposit down on a commercial space for my next venture. It's going to be huge. I can feel it. His words confirmed my suspicions. He wasn't just paying off debt, he was spending money he didn't even have yet. You already put down a deposit? I asked, feigning confusion. But I thought you were in financial trouble. Mom shot him a sharp look, but Andrew just shrugged. I had to move fast. Once this debt's cleared, I'll be back on track. Dad interjected quickly. Why don't we sign those papers now while we're all together? He reached for his briefcase. I took a deep breath. It was time. Before we do that, there's something you all need to know. 3 pairs of eyes locked on me. I had a private conversation with Grandma Martha before she passed, I said, about her estate and her wishes. Dad frowned. Whatever she told you, the will is clear. And as executors, your mother and I, there's no money in the estate. I interrupted quietly. The words hung in the air. Mom finally broke the silence. What do you mean there's no money? That's ridiculous. Your grandmother was wealthy. I held Dad's gaze, watching his discomfort grow. 6 months before she died, Grandma transferred all major assets into an irrevocable trust. The will you're so eager to execute is basically empty. Andrew's face turned red with rage. He exploded. Grandma had money. She owned her house, she had investments. All in the trust, I confirmed. Mr. Patterson helped her set it up specifically to stop exactly what you're trying to do right now. Dad's expression hardened. You're lying. We would have known. Would you? I asked quietly. When's the last time any of you visited Grandma without asking for money? When did you spend time with her just because you loved her? Mom began to cry, but her tears felt more frustrated than sorrowful. This is so unfair, she sobbed. We're your family. That money should help all of us. The irony almost made me laugh. Dad dropped his voice to the stern tone I remembered from my teenage years. Alexandra, whatever game you're playing stops now. Your brother needs this. If you're trying to negotiate for a cut, just say so. I'm not negotiating, I said calmly. I'm informing you. The assets you're after aren't in the estate. They're in a trust with me as beneficiary. Andrew leapt to his feet. She's lying. She's a spoiled selfish. She's always thought she's better than me. Andrew, Mom gasped, but there was no real rebuke in her voice. Dad tried a different approach, softening his tone. Honey, if this is true, and I'm not saying it is, we can work with the trust. You can still help your brother. That's what your grandmother would want. The manipulation is almost insulting, I said evenly. Grandma set up the trust because she knew you'd try this. She told me you'd been pressuring her for years to bail Andrew out. Mom's tears stopped instantly. Her voice turned cold. That old woman never saw Andrew's potential. She always favored you. The mask had dropped. I pulled out my phone. Did you know Virginia is a one-party consent state for recordings? I asked lightly. Only one person needs to consent. Dad's face went pale. You didn't? I gave a humorless smile. From the moment I walked in. Every word about taking my inheritance, Andrew's gambling debts, the commercial space deposit, all of it. Give me that phone, Dad barked, stepping toward me. I didn't flinch. It's already backed. Up. Jessica and Mr. Patterson have copies. Mom stared at me like she didn't recognize her own daughter. How could you do this to your family? How could I? I shot back. You were planning to steal from me. You didn't even ask. You decided. Andrew was pacing now, pointing accusingly. You think you're perfect with your fancy job. You don't know what it's like to struggle. I laughed bitterly. I worked 3 jobs to put myself through college while you failed out of the private school Mom and Dad paid for. I saved. For years to buy my condo while you expected handouts. Don't talk to me about struggle. Dad tried one last card. If you expose this, you'll destroy this family. Is that what you want? I'm not planning to expose anything unless you force me. I just want you to stop trying to take what's mine. Mom straightened her shoulders. This isn't over. We can contest the trust. The trust is ironclad, I said calmly. Grandma was of sound mind. There's medical documentation. It was done 6 months before she passed. Mr. Patterson is one of the best trust attorneys in the state, but by all means waste your money trying. Andrew spat. You're dead to us. It stung, but I stayed composed. That's your choice. But remember, I'm the only one here who hasn't tried to steal from family. I grabbed my purse and jacket. For what it's worth, I might have helped you if you just asked, but that bridge is burned. Dad blocked the door. Don't leave like this. We can talk. There's nothing more to say, I replied. Stepping around him. The money stays in the trust. Maybe someday we can have a relationship not based on what you can take from me. As I left, I heard Mom's tearful voice. What will we tell people? Even now, appearances mattered more than relationships. The months after were turbulent. Though I knew I'd done the right thing, the estrangement hurt. Every text from my parents wasn't an apology. It was another manipulation attempt. Your brother's devastated. Dad's having chest pains. How can you do this to us? Jessica became my anchor, showing up with food, wine, and an open ear. You did what you had to do, Lex, she said. Your grandmother protected you because she loved you. Family doesn't steal from family. Over time, I built what therapists call a chosen family friends who offered genuine support with no strings attached. And I learned I wasn't alone. Cousins and relatives reached out, sharing their own stories of being financially manipulated by my parents for Andrew's sake. 3 months later, I honored my grandmother by founding the Martha Williams Financial Literacy Foundation. Using part of my inheritance, I created programs teaching young adults about healthy financial boundaries. Every time a student set a boundary or made their first investment, I felt Grandma's approval. 6 months later, I gave Andrew one last chance, not with money, but with professional guidance. I emailed, offering free financial counseling. His response? Unless you're offering actual money, don't bother. Your advice is worthless. That rejection gave me closure. Nearly a year later, my parents called. Andrew's latest venture had failed. They were drowning in loans. They didn't want reconciliation, they wanted money. I refused. I'll help you find a counselor, but I won't give you cash, I said. Dad called me selfish. This time, it didn't shake me. These experiences taught me powerful lessons. True family respects your boundaries. Financial independence isn't just money, it's the strength to say no. Your value isn't defined by what you give, but by how you protect your peace. My grandmother once said, "Sometimes the most loving thing you can do is say no." I finally understand. Today I live a life she'd be proud of, secure, meaningful, and free from manipulation. And to anyone facing something similar, remember, setting boundaries isn't selfish, it's survival. Have you had to draw hard lines with family over money? What helped you stay firm? Share your story in the comments. If this resonated, hit like and subscribe for more. And remember, your worth isn't measured by what you give to takers, but by the boundaries you set to protect your peace.